Who was Tipu Sultan, hero or rebel? Tipu Sultan is still revered in India as the Tiger of Mysore. He won many battles against the British and he did not compromise his self-respect for them. This is why even today, he's considered a symbol of resistance against colonialism and imperialism. But the British had a different opinion about him. They called him the Colossus of the Peninsula. He built the world's first zoological garden and the first museum in India. But then the other kingdoms of South India who had alliances with Mysore started deserting him. They forced him to give up some of his territories, and they kept interfering in the affairs of Mysore. He had the support of the kingdom of Cochin, the Marathas, and the Sindhi of Raj. Together, they fought against the British. Now, normally, Tipu would have been victorious because the British were exhausted and needed to rest. People in India celebrate his birthday as a state holiday. Also, this is your host. If you want to watch more such episodes, subscribe to our channel. But in reality, Tipu Sultan was a product of his time. He was ambitious and ruthless. He used religion to mobilize his subjects. He was also extremely cruel. He massacred the Kodava soldiers after the Second Anglo-Mysore War, and he chained women to chariots like horses. So we can't call him a hero either. Tipu Sultan was a legend of his time, a leader who had the courage to stand up against the British and fight. So was he a hero or a villain? Well, that's for you to decide. But then his ally, the Marathas, made peace with the British. And this time, Tipu didn't have enough strength to fight alone. He resisted the British for 13 long days, but eventually he had to surrender. Once again, he had to pay a lot of money, and once again, he refused to sign the treaty. The British hated this. Now they wanted to punish Tipu Sultan for being so in 1799, Tipu finally decided to revolt. They gathered a huge army, more than 60,000 strong, and marched towards Mysore. On the other side, Tipu Sultan had a smaller army, but it was well trained and led by the legendary general himself. Tipu was confident that he would win, but fate had other plans. When the two armies met near the city of Seringapatam, it seemed like Tipu would be victorious. His cannons were doing a lot of damage to the British, but suddenly, one of his cannons exploded. Tipu's son and many other soldiers were killed in this explosion. Grief-stricken, Tipu rode forward to see what had happened. That's when the British captured him. Tipu put up a brave fight, but he was outnumbered, and ultimately he was killed. His head was cut off and taken to Bangalore, where it was paraded through the streets. The British were so proud of themselves that they held a gun salute in their victory. This is how the Second Anglo-Mysore War began. Tipu had learned from his mistakes in the previous war. He attacked the British unexpectedly, and for some time, it looked like he would win. His army was far more disciplined and stronger than before. Also, he had forged an alliance with the kingdom of Cochin. But once again, his allies betrayed him, so Tipu had to fight alone. He fought bravely, but ultimately he lost. Again, he had to pay a lot of money to the British as war indemnity. But Tipu refused to accept the treaty. He was not willing to compromise his self-respect. The British were furious. They had never seen someone like Tipu who wouldn't bend in front of them. So they decided to teach him a lesson. They invaded Mysore yet again. This was the Third Anglo-Mysore War. Tipu had made enemies in the south, and now none of them came to his help. The British, on the other hand, had allies everywhere. So Tipu lost the war. In fact, he had to pay the British 50 lakh rupees as war indemnity. To make sure that such a war never happened again, he signed a treaty with them. According to this treaty, Mysore would become a British protectorate. Tipu would recognize the British paramountcy, and in return, the British promised to protect Mysore from outside aggression. Tipu was furious after losing the war. He hated the way the British had deceived him. He wanted to break the treaty, but then he realized that he would need another decade to build a strong army. He decided to bide his time and wait for the right moment to attack the British. In the meantime, he continued to modernize his army. He set up a mint and started minting his own coins. He promoted trade and industry, and he made sure that there was enough food for everyone in his kingdom. All of these reforms required money. So to raise funds, he levied new taxes. The rich traders and landlords had to pay a special tax called the Good. Now, since these people felt that they were being taxed too much, they approached the British and asked them to intervene. This is what happened. The British East India Company had come to India as traders, but gradually they had started interfering in the politics of the kingdoms here. So when these traders complained to them about Tipu Sultan's high taxes, the British decided to take advantage of it. They went to Tipu and told him that if he lowered the taxes, they would help him collect them. On the surface, it looked like a good deal, but in reality, it was a trick. Once the British got access to Mysore's finances, they started controlling it. Soon Tipu realized that he had been tricked, so he tried to get rid of the British agents. But then, they accused Tipu of harassing them, and soon the British declared war on him. This is how the First Anglo-Mysore War began. To them, he was a dangerous man who had to be stopped at any cost, and they killed him fighting in the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War when he was only 49 years old. What really made Tipu Sultan so powerful that both the British and Indians praised him? We will find out in this episode. Hello and welcome. This is the story of Tipu. When Tipu Sultan came to power in 1787, Mysore was just another kingdom in South India. It was not very rich or powerful, but during his rule, he transformed Mysore into one of the most powerful states in South India. So how exactly did he do it? Well, the first thing he did was expand his army. He wanted to have a standing army, which other Indian kingdoms didn't have. Most Indian rulers of that time would raise an army only when they were going to war. But Tipu Sultan wanted an army which would be ready to fight at all times. He expanded the infantry from 15,000 to 60,000 soldiers and artillery from 200 to 500 cannons. In fact, he was one of the pioneers of using artillery in India. Also, while most armies of India followed the caste system, Tipu Sultan's army was open to all, regardless of their social status. He believed that military skills were more important than birth. This meant that he could pick the best talent available in his kingdom and train them to become soldiers. Not only that, he also reorganized his army on European lines. This made his soldiers more disciplined and helped them fight better. He introduced new weapons and tactics, and also set up military training centers. He personally trained a lot of officers. He knew that if he wanted to compete with the might of the British East India Company, he would have to make his army strong. He knew that his army was no match to the British, so he avoided direct confrontations with them. Instead, he played one side against the other, forming alliances with the Nizam of Hyderabad and the Kingdom of Artso. He also modernized his kingdom by setting up civil services, collecting accurate land revenue and building infrastructure like roads, canals and bridges. It took place between 1790 and 1792. At first Tipu put up a good fight and he kept pushing the British back. Meanwhile, the British were creating a lot of problems for Tipu. This time, Tipu was not alone. In 1800, the British started preparing for a final showdown with Today, Tipu Sultan is called the hero of India. And if you want us to make more videos like this, do let us know in the comments.